In a few weeks, we'll be creating an informative essay, and you will be doing this on a topic of your choice. But for the purposes of understanding what we need to do, we're going to start with making a graphic organizer. And I'm going to use our NHA model for how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. The NHA model that we have to use has us doing a complete draft by the end of next week. And this is what it is going to look like. You have your opening paragraph and your two body paragraphs and your closing paragraph. But before we get to this finished product, we have to work with outlining the whole thing. Before we can get to writing the finished product, we have to start with the graphic organizer. Keep in mind, NHA provides us with these graphic organizers to help us stay organized, just like we help you stay organized in this classroom. So we're going to use these circles and we're going to outline the key ideas that we talk about. So, how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. One way smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society is allowing the phone to track where we are, or using our current location. Either is fine. Another way smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society is we can immediately be accessible. And what does that mean? So basically, if I feel like I want to just right now contact one of my friends, I can just pick up the phone and send a text message, or send a quick Snapchat, or a quick smart message, if you, again, have one of the smartphones that most of you I see using anyway. So now that we have two ideas, we now need to come up with a third. And so we're going to do this 4 more times. And each time we're thinking about this, it has to relate back to how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. So another way that smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society are the different apps. Or different applications that we use. So those different applications can be, we can do a little squiggly line so we can understand that we're talking about like Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. So what's another way that smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society? We rarely call people. We use text messaging. So text messaging instead of calling. So again, we have to keep making sure we are following how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. So another way we can think about how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society, we can send pictures the same as a video chat. So again, we're not necessarily picking up the phone and calling anybody. We're sending pictures, which are the same as a video chat. And now in our final circle, brings us back to our point of how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. We can say we can easily track our lives and document them. So we can take a picture, put a filter on it, which you know what those are, changing the way a picture actually looks, and put some text with it, just like you have this image with the text on it, and then we can immediately send it to friends. Again, that allows us to be immediately accessible. We're using different apps, and we're using text messaging features instead of calling, and this is how smartphones have changed the way people communicate in society. So now that we have this information, we're going to take this and form this into an outline, and that outline will help us form the finished product. Here I have this blank piece of paper, so we can take our ideas from our circles and create our outline. So we're going to start with our title, which is Smartphones have revolutionized communication. So now that we have our title, we now need to start our outline. And remember, we talked about how the outlines have to start with numerical numbers. So our first one will be getting us set up for our introductory paragraph, and so we're going to title that Introduction. Now everything under the introduction, Roman numeral 1, will be things that we were going to talk about in our introductory paragraph. So let's start with under introduction, we're going to just indent a little bit, and we're going to start that with lowercase a. And this is going to be the setup for what we're going to talk about based off of the circles that we created. So we can start with restating the question. It asks us, how have smartphones revolutionized communications? So we can say, in this day and age, people use smartphones for everything. So now that we have our basic sentence, we are now telling our readers they are going to read about how smartphones have changed the way we communicate and how they have done that. So now that we have our basic introduction sentence, we need another one. And so with this, we're going to add our letter B, because remember, a paragraph is about 4 to 6 sentences. And so we're going to start with these two basic ones, and then we'll learn how to expand on them in another lesson. So to keep moving with our introduction, to keep understanding what we're going to talk about first, with here we're telling the reader what we're going to talk about. Next, we're going to tell them, well, how are we going to do this? And what are we saying? And we can revert back to our title and tell our readers that smartphones have revolutionized, see, teachers make mistakes too, revolutionized the way people communicate with each other in today's society. And keep in mind, our question says, how does people do this? So instead of writing our question, we can turn our question into a statement and saying smartphones have revolutionized the way people communicate with each other in today's society. So this is just our introductory paragraph, well, the start of our introductory paragraph, because we need to come up with a hook. And remember, we talked about that in another writing. What do we want our readers to know? So we can either start this with a question, or we can start it with a fact. Did you know that over half of the US use smartphones as their computer? And so people can have some sort of something to draw them in, and we'll work on that after we have built our introduction. So that's our the start of our introductory paragraph. Now we need to move into our body paragraph. So we're going to label that Roman numeral 2 and then title it body. So with our body paragraph, we need to have again, lowercase letters to indicate the sentences that we'll be talking about. And so we're going to go back to our circles that we used before. So remember our circles, we said allowing the phone to track where we are, can be immediately accessible. The different applications that we use like Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. So we can start taking these and turning these into sentences for our body part. Got it? So let's try one. Smartphones, or people communicate with smartphones to be immediately accessible. So let's write that. People use smartphones to be immediately accessible. Another sentence that we have over there, because we don't have to use them all. Keep in mind it's just a short assignment this time. So we can use another one. If they're using them to be easily accessible, what are they doing with them? So they can text message instead of calling. So we have to draw from our previous sentence and say to be easily accessible people text instead of calling. Another way that they do this is that they video chat. So we're going to take the video chat one and we're going to add it for our C. Another, and so we're going to use a transition word. I'm going to box it out so we know that we are using a transition word. Another way people are easily accessible is by using video chat instead of a regular phone call. Now, some will say that video chatting and text messaging are similar, but if you are out somewhere and you want to see what's happening, some people do video chatting or consider video chatting and text messaging to be different. So if this is all we want to say about how smartphones have revolutionized communication, then we can stop here if we feel that our point is strong, and then we can go ahead and close out with our conclusion paragraph. And so then we will need a Roman numeral 3, and then so we started with our introduction, then we moved to the body, and now we're going to the conclusion. And the conclusion is just summing everything up that we've talked about in the most concise way. So we've talked about smartphones have changed the way people and society communicate. So I'm running out of space. I'm gonna have to go to the next page. So our next letter, lowercase b, and we're gonna have to conclude it with in order to keep up in this digital world, people need a smartphone. And let's go back to why we said people need and use smartphones. In order to, he said, stay informed. We also said to be immediately accessible, and some use it to keep up with other family members. So now that we have our 3 body parts, our 3 parts for our paper, we are ready to start forming our informative essay, which we will do on a different day. Now this is just our outline, and we are ready to write.